Hi everybody and welcome to Matrix Live Season 4 Episode 20, I believe, and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2020, and I hope that everybody had a marvellous break over the holidays, be that Christmas or Yule or Hanukkah or whatever. It's just me, because this is, I guess, the tail end of the Christmas break. Lots of people have actually been useful and productive. I've been working remotely and getting involved in stuff, so I'm still off in the sticks, as you can probably guess. But thought it would be fun to give a quick update on what we have planned for 2020. You might have seen the blog post that I put out on Christmas Eve, which was an attempt to summarise 2019 and also look forward a bit to what's happening in 2020. And I thought it might make sense to talk specifically about some of the immediate priorities which we're up to right now. The most obvious ones, he says, looking at his notes, are end-to-end encryption by default. As everybody knows who's probably watching this, we've had end-to-end encryption since about 2016, and we've iterated on it a lot in that time frame, trying to make it reliable on decentralized environments like Matrix, adding in key backup, adding in key verification, adding in key requests, key share requests in order to work around issues where you might not have the keys you need to decrypt messages, all of this stuff. And we're finally at the point where we have a plausible shot of turning it on by default. This has involved implementing the end-to-end search in chat rooms using Seshet that we've talked about a lot in the past, which I believe is almost finished. We had a nasty memory leak just before Christmas, where it was leaking about 1 gigabyte of RAM a minute, going and based on how it encrypts the local indexes of your store. It's really cool. It takes your E2E rooms, it indexes them client side, and then it goes and stores the index on disk. But had the minor problem that the this leak, due to how we were using the tentav Rust library for handling this encryption, is pretty bad. It's been fixed, but we've had to do it by forking tentav. We tried to upstream this, but Formikaton, the maintainer and author of tentav, was concerned, shall we say, about the extent of the hack that we had to do to change the entire access model of the indexes so that we can run it through an encryption layer correctly. But either way, we've got a solution there. What other dependencies are there? There is all of the new verification code, so now verifying users in DM rather than via 2-device messages is now pretty much done, I think, on at least Android and Riot X and web, iOS following shortly. We're at the point of actually turning on cross-signing properly, so we've got the secure secret server-side storage stuff hooked up so that we can actually store our cross-signing keys and data on the server, encrypted of course, and Riot Web has that hooked up, and I think might even have started to do attestations using it. And I saw earlier that Riot X is also, no, iOS is looking at that right now. So that is also coming together, but oh my god, there are so many moving parts. And we've gone and set ourselves the deadline of the end of January to try to pull this together and turn it on by default, landing all of these moving parts and having at least an option when you start a DM with somebody that says this is going to be encrypted end to end. Oh, by the way, if you don't want this because you know that you're talking to somebody who can't, who's a bot or something who can't decrypt yet, you would have the option to opt out. But by default, any new DMs and hopefully any new private rooms would have it turned on by default. The next step beyond that will obviously be migrating your existing DMs and private rooms. We might be able to get to that as well. So that's kind of the stretch goal. And it's really everybody panicking away, going and trying to pull this together. What other bits are there? I mean, basically the entirety of Riot X is a dependency on this, because we haven't done any of this stuff on the old Riot Android app, and therefore, to use it on Android, you're going to have to be on Riot X, but also for it to even be useful in terms of cross-signing your devices so that you are verifying your own devices and attesting to their identity to other people, you're going to have to go and use Riot X if you're on Android. So it only really is useful if you have your browser, say, or Riot desktop and mobile too. And let's face it, 80% probably of people on Matrix are using Android as their mobile device. So that really means that for any of this to be useful in practice, they need to be using RiotX on Android. So there is also a huge sprint going on to stabilize RiotX again by the end of January, so that A, we can get at all of the new cross-signing goodness, and B, so we can just kill off the old Riot app entirely and make it fit for use. There have been some big improvements over the last couple of weeks. The French team have been working through the Christmas break trying to pull it together, and basically good luck to them. And please, if you're a RiotX user, keep using it. If you're not a RiotX user, now is probably a good time to start trying to use it and file bug reports and help us converge on a stable exit for beta at the end of Jan. So you might be wondering where this end of Jan thing has come from, and comically or tragicomically, the main impetus there here is wanting to have our talk at FOSDEM, which is called Making or Breaking End-to-End Encryption in Matrix, with a subtext of how we turned on E2E in Matrix by default, actually be true. At the point that I published or applied for the talk back in October, it looked quite plausible that we would have all of this done by the end of Jan. It still is plausible, but the deadline's getting tight, and so we're trying to work to that deadline so that we can show it off at FOSDEM, or at least be very close to it. A bit like we did last year, honestly, in getting the Riot Web redesign for Riot 1.0 out the door so that we could show it off at FOSDEM, and also, ironically, do the very first preview of the initial cut of cross-signing, which we subsequently threw away and did a totally different way on the implementation that is landing now. Talking of FOSDEM, we have 3 talks accepted this year, which is unprecedented and slightly scary. We've got the main stage talk, which is at 4 p.m. on Sunday in K Building, which is Making or Breaking E2E. And the idea is that we're going to both show off all of the new E2E stuff we've done, explain how we've hopefully turned it on by default and all the features that comes with, and then critically we're going to try to attack it. This is complete vaporware at the moment, and I'm already feeling like an idiot for coming up with this amazing talk. Not to mention that it's going to be me having to work out how to best attack it. But the idea is to man in the middle it with something like MITM proxy or BERT proxy. So see what happens if you start intercepting the TLS, and then start see what happens if you go and add malicious devices on the server if you're a malicious server admin. Look on the server to see what metadata there is there. Try to trick the user into thinking that they've added a device when they haven't added a device. All these sort of attacks, which are quite plausible, and see how well all of the new cross-signing stuff actually protects the users from that sort of attack. And also explore the threat model in general and see how far we can push it. Obviously, rubber hose attacks, not covered in the model. Hacking the client is not covered really in the model too. So we're basically going to have a E2E Lollapalooza extravaganza, which hopefully will be fun. Let's find out. If you're at FOSDEM, please come along to the graveyard shift at 4 p.m. on Sunday in the big auditorium in K Building next to the Matrix stand to find out how it goes. But we also have 2 other talks. We have a P2P talk called The Path to Peer-to-Peer Matrix, which is also on Sunday. I forget when precisely. It's in the decentralized internet room. And this is really exciting stuff in that recently we've actually been able to start looking seriously at next generation Matrix in general. And Matrix has a big problem that it requires a server, and where to start? First of all, if you want to have full self-sovereignty over your comms, you need to be able to run a server. And therefore you need to be a professional sysadmin. And not many people are professional sysadmins, and even then, it's an incredible time sink to go and run your own infrastructure. So you could just go and blindly trust somebody else to run it for you, or wouldn't it be nice if you could run the server yourself, magically, transparently on your client by having it built into Riot, or whatever your favorite Matrix client might be, or indeed built into your operating system. So that's what we're looking at doing with P2P. It's also a great opportunity to improve metadata resilience matrix, because right now your home server sees all the metadata for all of your conversations. Inevitably, it's storing and forwarding your messages around the place, and that's just how it works today. But if you ran the server on the client and you deliberately didn't include any servers in the conversation at all, other than possibly for store and forward purposes, this is a great opportunity for the user to be in full ownership and control of their metadata. So we actually have this looking quite promising. We've been hacking on Dendrite. Neil Alexander joined the core matrix team just before Christmas and has jumped in with slightly alarming enthusiasm into hacking on Dendrite and getting it federating again, which as of yesterday it does again. Yay! And I've been hacking around a bit on getting various peer-to-peer transports hooked up, extending the stuff I was doing at Web3 Summit back in, I think, October possibly. And I don't want to preempt it, but we should at least have a pretty fun demo of how Matrix can look and feel in a P2P world. So that's one talk. And then the other talk is on the real-time communication track and is called Bridge All the Things, I think, or Crossing the Bifrost. Yeah, it's called Crossing the Bifrost, all about bridging in Matrix. And I think this one is going to end up being Halfshot doing it, because he is a lot more qualified than me to talk about bridges, and the mission is to just really improve bridging in general, go and put more UX into Riot so you can see whether your bridges are up and down, what bridges are actually connected to a room, perhaps even presence to see which users are available via which bridges, and then just do a 20-minute completely over the top, let's see how many things we can bridge into one great big room. Let's show off some of the other bridges from the community, like Teleers, Mailtrix, WhatsApp, and Telegram bridges, possibly a Signal bridge, possibly an iMessage bridge. And bridging is such a fun bit of Matrix, which, let's face it, has been somewhat uninvested in over the years. It's been great since Halfshot came on the full team, came on the core team full time. It must be 6 months ago now, or so, a bit longer. And as part of that renaissance, we really want to make them work well. It's one of the more unique aspects of Matrix, and it's something that a lot of people depend on for IRC today, and quite possibly XMPP in future with Bifrost. We want them not to suck, we want them to be as good as possible, so it's a good opportunity to show it all off. So that's what's coming up on February the 1st and 2nd in FOSDEM in Brussels. If you are remotely near Brussels, like on the same planet, for instance, I strongly recommend coming along, not just to come and chat with us and tell us how amazing or awful Matrix is, and what bugs need to be fixed now, etc. But just because it's a crazy event. The University Libre of Bruxelles is taken over in its entirety for the weekend. You get about 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people turn up, about 30 simultaneous tracks, and every open source project in the world pretty much turning up in person to go and hang out and enthuse about their respective stuff. It's really fun. So looking forward to that, albeit lots and lots of stuff to do beforehand. What else should I talk about? Road to reply to Moxie Marlinspike's The Ecosystem is Moving blog post that he wrote back in 2016. It's kind of 4 years now, almost overdue, because at the time he wrote it as a response to an email thread that we had going on where I was trying to persuade him to add Signal to Matrix, and he was kind of saying, hey, why would I want to do that? Plus, decentralization sucks because it slows everything down, and it's just a nightmare, and I'd much rather have full control over everything and make it perfect, and everyone will have to trust me to get it right, but I know what I'm doing, blah blah blah. So he did a talk at 36C3, the Chaos Congress in Leipzig last week, in which he talked through the whole thing again. I still haven't actually had a chance to see the talk, not least because he said he didn't want anybody to see the recording, so so be it. But I hear it was even more extreme than the blog post in positioning, so I wrote the response, which hopefully spells out our position that privacy is good, freedom is also good. It's nice to be able to run your own server and build your own software and have an open ecosystem where you can extend it any way you like, rather than being locked into a closed network and a closed ecosystem, even if it's open source, even if it's standards based. If in the end it's a silo which you cannot play in on your own terms, it doesn't sound like a very fun world to me. Seems to have been vaguely well received. A lot of people took the opportunity to bitch about Moxie on it, which I thought was a bit harsh. I mean, Moxie seems like a really nice guy, honestly. I've met him a few times, and we've spoken through the subject of the blog post. He obviously has his agenda. I have my agenda. And we basically agreed to disagree. And every conversation we've had has ended with, look, seriously, if you think that Matrix can be successful, good luck with that, and prove me wrong. And so, we're kind of bloody-minded, trying to soldier on and prove him wrong. And I guess final thing to talk about in terms of priorities, at least for the coming year, is FTUE, first time user experience on Riot. Really frustrating thing about all of this E2E stuff that we've been doing is that it's kind of indirectly improved the UX. Like, verification is going to feel way better, onboarding should feel way better, but there are massive screaming other problems which we're just not making as much progress on. Now, Travis has been working away on some of these over Christmas and is very much appreciated, but there are still huge chunks of the app which elicit a bit of a WTF response when people try to use it. For instance, all of communities. For instance, I know the many aspects of the user list, the letterboxes that we've ended up with at the moment kind of ties into communities. The fact that when you DM somebody, it doesn't just come up, instead it goes through the whole invite waiting dance thing, which could be streamlined so much better while still having the same security semantics. We have a huge list of things which we want to do to make Riot suck less for first-time users. And really, for first-time users, it's a euphemism for everyone. It's not just the newbers. So I've spoken about this before on Matrix Live. It's just really frustrating that we haven't made as much progress as we want, and as soon as E2E is on by default, we are going to be blitzing it as hard as we can. We're also trying to hire up the design side of the team. At the moment, it is still Nad, our lead designer, doing everything, and that turns out to be a lot of stuff between Riot X and Riot iOS and Riot Web and the Riot website and Matrix website and everything else. So if you know anybody who is an awesome UX UI designer who wants to come and help us out, particularly with this new wave of making Riot as good as Slack or Discord, or if not better in terms of usability, please point them towards jobs at vector.im or jobs at matrix.org, and get in touch. That's probably about it for me. Sorry for monologuing, sorry that it's just me. Hopefully there was something of interest there, and I wish everybody an amazing new year and have a fantastic almost decade. The decade, as everybody probably knows, actually begins next new year, but it's the 20s, whatever, and let's make the most of it and hope that this does indeed become the year of Matrix, or indeed the decade of Matrix. Thanks everybody, thanks for flying Matrix, speak to you soon, bye.